Good morning. How's everybody doing? Well, we're
Quiet.
doing great.
Very
Yes.
quiet.
Yes. We are very, very excited here to be in front of you guys here at Dreamforce. I'm Scott Mitchell, Product Marketing Manager for Nintex. I'm joined here by my friend and Senior Product Manager, Dan Barker. And we're here to introduce you not only to Nintex, but particularly our latest workflow capability, Nintex Workflow Cloud, and its ability to eliminate workflow complexity around the Salesforce platform. So that involves different information residing outside of Salesforce and the impact it can have within a Salesforce record. And Dan, again, is going to illustrate that to you in greater detail. Why is that important? Well, as we all know, over the last 3 to 5 years, our business and information landscape has changed drastically. The way software is packaged and delivered has really changed the barriers of entry to various industries. We all know the examples. We know that the largest cab company nowadays don't own any cabs. We know in order to go and watch a movie, you don't have to go in the store anymore. Without going into details, I think that's an illustration of the era of digital disruption that we live in today. When you combine that with the proliferation and diversity of people, process, and the information sources that they have to impact, you can see that this makes for a very complex and highly sophisticated business process landscape. How do you keep up with that level of disruption? That's the question that today's organizations need to ask themselves. And we here at Nintex, being a digital workflow automation organization, understand that process is at the heart of it all. Specifically, having a very keen, intense focus on optimizing your business process to the point where you can streamline your resources that allow you to innovate going forward in a constant fashion to stay ahead of all of these digital disruption that's breaking down the barriers, as I just mentioned. We here at Nintex, again, understand process. We understand it from the simple to sophisticated at the enterprise level across the board. Over the past decade, our organization has made a significant impact on some of the most reputable enterprise information content repositories in the space. And we've done it through our diverse workflow platform here, as you can see. We have on-premise workflow that allows you to automate process in a drag and drop fashion with less coding and more configuration, as Dan's going to illustrate here later. We also have on-premise as well as mobile form technology where you can enter that mission-critical data for all of your processes unique to your business. We understand connectors, which again, Dan is going to illustrate, how to touch different information repositories and bring them all together in order to optimize processes in such a diverse information landscape that we live in today. We just recently made a document generation acquisition with Drawloop. I recommend you guys go and check out their booth down in the Cloud Expo. But that's all about intelligently generating documents, again, from multiple information sources based on the unique type of business and SaaS applications that you have in your business. And then finally, we just recently released Nintex Hawkeye. That's our workflow analytic capability. So that means it can look at all of these different particular pieces of our workflow stack, tell you which part is working hard for you, so you can land and expand in an intelligent fashion the most effective processes across your business and ultimately build up that business process agility portfolio that you can streamline across your entire organization. That brings us to the Nintex Workflow Cloud. This is our latest workflow capability. It's a platform-agnostic, cloud-based workflow tool. It's built on top of very robust, highly reputable, multi-tenant cloud architecture, giving you the scalability and flexibility that you need to build your workflow processes, again, in the most flexible, diverse fashion as possible. To build the workflows in particular, Dan's going to illustrate our drag and drop workflow designer that, again, allows you to build simple to sophisticated workflows with more clicks and less code. It's designed to meet your users wherever you are. So on the front end, if you're used to interfacing with a particular SaaS or a system, the Workflow Cloud can integrate to support that and also have the back-end system that drives all of the information on the front end updated as well. And it's all designed to allow you to orchestrate business processes regardless of where the information is captured, processed, or stored. So again, as I said, we're very, very excited to provide you with a demonstration of how the Nintex Workflow Cloud can automate a quote-to-cash scenario involving not only Salesforce, but other SaaSes outside of the Salesforce platform, and have those other SaaSes impact the Salesforce record in turn. So with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Dan so he can show you a demo of everything I just described. So Dan, the floor is yours.
Awesome, thank you. Well, as Scott mentioned, my name is Dan Barker, and I'm one of the senior product managers at Nintex. And really excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about the product, a little bit about me. I was a developer, an architect, and analyst for a while, so I've been in your shoes. How many developers are there in the audience right now? Okay, we have some developers. What about admins? Okay, good. I've been there, so I know how hard it is to develop some of these solutions, manage them, and grow them over time. So I've been in your shoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk through a demo and show you the product. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how it's going to address a very serious problem. Not yet, after the next slide. So we have a problem right now, and you guys are probably living this today. I know when I was a developer and an architect, I had the same problem. And the problem is that process spans multiple systems. And it's really hard to connect those systems. It's really hard to connect the people and the different groups that are a part of that process. And it usually requires code, complexity, and it's very difficult. So what I'm going to talk about is our ability to address this particular problem. So from a technical perspective, it's very hard to address these issues across the organization. And of course, as you guys know, in this scenario we're going to talk about, Salesforce is going to be used as the CRM. So Salesforce is very good. It has workflow tools. Who uses the workflow tools in Salesforce today? Awesome. Yeah, they're very good, right? So what we're talking about here at Nintex isn't a replacement for that at all. What we're doing is we're extending and augmenting that story to go beyond the Salesforce platform, before and after it. So that's kind of the context here. And so when you're talking about process, as you know, a lot of these steps that you have move in and outside of Salesforce, right? There's people that some folks may or may not have access to Salesforce. And then you have the other systems that are involved. You have ERP systems. And we're going to use NetSuite in this particular example. We have HRIS systems. We have file sync and share systems, right? It's very hard to connect all of these together. And when you're talking about real process, obviously in some of the organizations, you're going to have homegrown solutions that are unique to your environment. So who works with homegrown solutions at all within their company? Yeah. It's very hard. So when you try to tie all of this together, it's really hard to automate it, right? So I'm not even talking about an automation piece, like manually to enforce that process, to have KPIs on it, to make sure that people are delivering and that we're addressing bottlenecks. It's really, really hard to do. And even if you are able to automate it with the complexity and the code, that if you're a developer, it's hard to manage over time. So in this demo, we're going to walk through how Nintex Workflow Cloud addresses this problem, and it can eliminate some of these complexities. So before I even begin, let's jump over into the demo. And I'm actually going to walk through a scenario, but before I do, I talked a little bit about the fact that we have different systems, right? And those systems can be spread. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Dan, it's really hard for us in our organization to actually address these problems because every system is different. They have different APIs. You may or may not be a developer, and being able to tie them together is very, very hard to do, much less automate. So what I'd like to do is show you how easy it is to begin this process. And it all begins with being able to listen for events, right? So workflows all start with something happening, and probably the most common scenario that you might be familiar with is just a form. A form gets submitted. Maybe it's an opportunity, something happening on your marketing site. It could be a lot of different things. Something internal, a request being made to an internal group to do something. And so what you need to be able to do is respond to those events. So a form is an easy one, but what about systems? What happens when something's happening in Salesforce and you want that to trigger something that maybe is also going to interact with your file sync and share, maybe Box or Dropbox or Google Drive? Or what about ERP? How do I tie those types of events together as well? So I'm going to show you how easy it is to begin this process. So regardless of your background, regardless of whether you're a developer or not, you'll have the ability to do this. So let's jump in right to the demo. And I'm going to show you the workflow designer to begin with. And what I'm going to do, if we could pan over to my desktop. Oh, let me close the session here real quick, so you can actually see the product. I'm going to start off in the design canvas. So this is where the drag and drop, no code magic happens, right? And what you'll see is the ease of starting this process. So I mentioned the ability to be able to listen to events, right? Listen to events happening in Salesforce, ERP, or what have you. So I can quickly go in here and create a start event that's listening for something in Box. Box is a really easy one. So in this start event within my designer, I'm going to pick Box, and I'm going to pick an event. Again, file sync and share is pretty easy, so I'm going to pick new file. And what this is going to do is Nintex Workflow Cloud is now going to monitor this Box file location. And the minute a file is dropped into this spot, and we'll call it path A, it's going to kick off a workflow. Now, that seems very simple, but this is quite powerful. Now, I'm doing this against Box. We could do this against all the connectors that we have available in the tool. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And if I were to publish this out, and if I dropped a file here, Nintex Workflow Cloud would pick it up, and then we could execute the rest of the workflow logic. Simple, but super important and incredibly powerful. Now, we're actually going to extend on this in the actual demo, but I just want to show you how easy it is. But you might be thinking, well, we don't use Box. Maybe it's just a Salesforce context. We can do that too. I'm going to pick Salesforce here, and maybe you want to kick off a workflow similar to what you might use on the platform. Maybe there is a new lead. So when I pick new lead, I select a connection, which I've already established before coming here, and it's going to pull through some metadata that's a part of that event that you might want to use within your workflow. A lot of that metadata can be used, and I'll show you different ways that that can come to fruition. So again, very easy to start this process to listen to events, and we scale that out for you. You don't have to build code to do that. This isn't a manual process. This is all drag and drop without any code. Lastly, if it's NetSuite, and again, this will be in the actual demo scenario that we walk through, maybe you want to kick off a workflow when there's a updated payment. That's a very common scenario, right? Yeah, we've closed the business in Salesforce. It's closed one, but that actually just starts the relationship, right? Now we have to cut a PO. We might have to get some signatures. We might want to check for creditworthiness. There's just a lot of things that you need to do within this particular process from a contract management standpoint. All right, so let's actually go into a demo here of a scenario. Now, the scenario we're going to walk through, we'll use a fictitious company, Acme, and probably very similar to your environment. Their marketing, their sales, their procurement, fulfillment, and contract management and finance groups are all globally dispersed, right? And that makes things very, very difficult to tie in the process. And the one thing we're going to focus in on here is being able to tie in legal. So how many of you actually have process where you have to get legal approval? Okay, a few of you do. What about signatures? All right, signatures are another common step to the process. So in our case, we're using Salesforce CRM, and we need to tie in the legal group. Now, legal, they don't really use anything. In my background, you're lucky if they're using email and spreadsheets, and that's basically all you get. So how do I automate that group, who is such an important part of this process, to make sure that before we cut an invoice, before we go into signature phase and begin the relationship with the customer, how do we make sure that we automate that connection point? Because it can be difficult. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use Box to facilitate this, because Box is easy, and we're going to use email to alert the legal group that something has started. So Box here is the trigger event to this workflow, just like we saw a couple seconds ago. And the event here is new file, and we're monitoring for a particular file location. In this case, it's demo draft. So if I go over to my Box environment, you'll see I have demo draft folder here. And what Nintex Workflow Cloud is doing right now is the minute I drop a file here, what happens from a technical perspective, not to get too geeky on you, but on the back end, there's an API call that's being made, and a webhook is going to fire, and we're going to see that event, and we're going to pick it up, and then we're going to allow that workflow instance to begin to progress. So I'll start this now to kind of show you how this works, and then we'll talk through the value and the power of this from a process perspective. So procurement's done their job. Contract managers have done their job. The sales rep has done all the work to get this opportunity and this lead to the point where we're ready to book the business, and now we're ready to engage legal. But legal doesn't use Salesforce. They don't use anything. They still have pagers in their group, right? They're kind of behind the times a little bit. So I'm going to drop a file here, and I'm going to kick this thing off. And the beauty of it is our legal representative is going to get a notification via email that this process has started. And I'm going to show you in the product what this looks like from an instance standpoint. So I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'll jump through this kind of quickly, but you'll notice here, this is the instance page. This is a historical record of every workflow that has initiated. So if an event has been received, you're going to see it here in the instance page. And since I just dropped that this morning, today's the 5th, 9:45 or 8:45, we can see that this process has kicked off. And I'm going to click on it, and we're going to see the instance detail. This is every step that I have in my workflow. And the workflow we're working with right now is this one right here. Now, I'm going to pan out so you can see all of this. It might not be very legible, but I want to show you just how robust this is at a high level. And what we have here is we have a start event listening for box, and we have a state machine that's managing this process through each state. And if you're not familiar with the state machine, no worries. It's just basically a way to manage the steps of a process. And the reason why the state machine is important is because we have box, and we want to security trim each box location based on what step of the process we're in, right? So we need an initial area where we can drop the file. That's what we're monitoring. And then we need a place where we can actually say, hey, legal, something's been dropped in here. We need your feedback. We need you to look at the terms of service. We need you to review this information. And then if you approve of this, if everything's good, risk is good, pricing good, then we're going to give you a nice, simple way via email to respond and say yes or no. And our workflow engine is actually going to pick that up. So the first email we get is just a nice to have that says the following file has been uploaded to the legal department box environment, gives us some information like the file name, the creation date. We can actually click on it and go out to box, which is really great. And then the other email that we're getting in here going to legal is a legal review is required. So I'll take on the role of the legal counsel, and let's just say for the sake of brevity that this contract looks good. If I click on this, we should be able to go out in box and actually review it. And it's your garden variety standard statement of work, right? There could be an RFI, it could be an RFQ, could be a lot of different things. But the bottom line is we need legal to review it. So looks good. I think we're okay. But if there were some things in there that were questionable or they needed some rework, the legal person could say no, and our workflow engine would pick it up. So I'm going to respond to this simply and say yes. Click yes. And then I'll show you what's happening in the workflow. So let's dig into the workflow designer and see what's actually happening. So in the draft state of the state machine, we've got some setup things happening. But the most important part is once we've dropped that in, Nintex Workflow Cloud's picked up the event. Now we're moving over to the review state of the state machine. And that's basically moving the file. So if you remember, I dropped the file in draft, but it's no longer in there. It's no longer in there because Nintex Workflow Cloud picked it up and it moved it into the next area per the process here. And so if I go into demo, into review, into approved, it's moved it into the review folder and it moved it into the approved folder. That means we're now in a location that's security trimmed, source of the truth, where all of our ready to sign documents are located. And it creates the endpoint to this process. But within the workflow, what you see here is the move file event. Now click on this and show you what that looks like. All of this is configurable. So when you click on an action, again, you can drag and drop it onto the canvas. When you click on it, the configuration pane moves in from the right. And again, you can simply pick your connection. And then depending on the type of action, you can configure it as such. And in this case, we're just simply moving the file, in this case, over to review. And then we have the express approval. Now, this is a really important step because we've engaged legal. We've given them an environment that we're monitoring. We're giving them not another system, not another task portal, not another thing to log into. It's just their email. Very simple, yet very powerful. And we're letting them know that, hey, something has kicked off and we need to review. That legal counsel has responded and said yes. And so we have two branches here that we can work with. Rework. If I would have said no, it would have gone into the rework state of the state machine. But in this case, I said yes, which you can see here, and that moves us over into approved. Now, if I move over into Salesforce, when I started this process, this is the opportunity that the sales rep was working on. It's called Edge SLA. we're at a particular point of the process here, and you can see the stage here is at decision makers. So if I refresh this, what we'll actually see is the result of the workflow engine executing some of the other steps in the process. So I'll go ahead and do that and show you that it should have progressed the stage into negotiation review. So that's great. That's changed. If I go back into my instance, excuse me, I can refresh this page, and we'll see the rest of these activities happening in real time, which is really, really great. So we had an email that was sent out. We went out and got some Salesforce information. Again, drag and drop, no code. We moved a file. We scheduled a task to legal. They responded, and we moved the file. Once the response was collected from the platform, we updated Salesforce, right? We updated the stage to the next stage, and we also sent out an SMS message. So I don't know if you can see this. I got an SMS message just to show you the Twilio integration. Now, the reason, it's probably not necessary at this step, but let's say the opportunity was, say, over $100,000 or $200,000, and you wanted to let senior management know that something's been done, legally approved. It's probably a nice thing to do. Some of our customers have done the same. So just to show you the Twilio piece, and I'll show you what that looks like here in the designer. So here's where we move the file into the approved area. Here's the update to Salesforce. And here's that little logic check. Again, we're using native actions here within the platform to just see, hey, is this opportunity more than $100,000? If it is, we want to notify VP of Sales using Twilio and sending an SMS message. And at that point, we're done with this step of the process. So, all right, we've engaged legal, we've updated Salesforce, but now we have another problem. We got to get signatures. We need to engage the ERP side, because once this is approved and things are signed, we need to create an ERP record. And that's another step that's very, very difficult to do. So we have another workflow here and another example of a start event. This is Salesforce, and we're listening for Salesforce updated opportunities. So when this particular opportunity gets updated after we step into the Salesforce side, this workflow is going to kick off. We're going to do a document generation step, and Scott mentioned DrawLoop is an acquisition that we made last year. That is embedded in here. So the doc gen piece is all embedded, ready to go. We're going to generate the document, which is a quote, and then we're going to use embedded DocuSign to sign that document. After that, the opportunity is going to be updated. Nintex Workflow Cloud is going to see that event, fire off, and then we're going to actually create a new record in ERP, in NetSuite. So before I do that, I thought it would be kind of cool just to kind of show you when we create the customer that, in fact, it's happening in real time. So let's do this. We'll do some audience participation. Let's get one of the names of the companies out here, and I'll put it in here really quick. So name of your company? Say it again.
McKesson.
McKessie? Okay. So hopefully I spelled this right. Is that right?
O-N. McKesson.
McKesson?
O-N.
O-N?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. And I'll just put in here an email address. And what's going to happen is once we go through those steps I just referred to, and your name will be Frank Smith for now. How's that? You'll actually see this ERP record being created here as a result of that. So here's NetSuite. After we run this next component, we're going to see this update. So let's go over to Salesforce. Let's generate document. This is DrawLoop in action, right? This is incredibly powerful stuff. So now we're going to use document generation to actually generate the quote. And this is going to use a template behind the scenes. If you're familiar with DrawLoop, you're familiar with this process. But if not, this is actually generating a document based on a template. And this is our boilerplate template for all of the quotes that we have within Acme in this example, in this scenario. Once it's done, we've embedded the DocuSign piece. Now we can get the signature. Again, for the sake of brevity, we're doing this here within Salesforce. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, if you remember, we were in legal review. I'm going to go ahead and start this. I'm going to sign it right here within Salesforce. I'm going to click Finish. And what this is going to do is it's going to update the Salesforce opportunity, like I mentioned. And then another workflow is going to kick off. So let me go back to instances and see if that workflow actually updates. And before I do that, I actually want to go back into my opportunity and make sure that the stage has been progressed to closed won. So here's my Edge SLA opportunity, and it hasn't quite finished yet. It might take a second But what's interesting is once this kicks off, we're going to see this instance come through here. Now, one of the cool things about the instance page, just from a high-level standpoint, as a developer, architect, or just a process admin in general, is this gives you a historical record. So if it completes successfully, you'll be able to see this here, or if there's a failure. So if I click into one of the instances that have kicked off, we're actually pulling in all of the error information that's happening in that third-party system. So if there's an error, you'll be able to see it here. We aggregate that. That's why I like to call our design canvas an API, a visual API hub, because that's basically what you're doing. You're allowing drag and drop to interact with those SaaSes. We're taking care of the heavy lifting, right? We're doing all the API work, which is great. So let me go back here. Doesn't look like it has updated yet. And if not, let's see why. Let's see. If we go back to Salesforce, let's see if this opportunity has been updated. And it has. So we're just a little bit hard behind and lag, but that opportunity should actually kick off a workflow here in a second. Now, what we should see when it's done is we're going to create a NetSuite record. Now, after that, there's another step that we're going to jump into for the sake of brevity. We only have a few minutes left. The last piece of this, okay, now that we're in ERP, we want to make sure that once that record has been created in ERP, when the payment is made, we want to circle back into Salesforce and update that opportunity. That's, again, very difficult to do. Unless you're a developer or you have some hardcore development experience, it's going to be really hard to do and hard to manage over time. Again, we're doing this with clicks and not code. Here's your NetSuite start event. Here's the update payment event. And this will allow us to then go back into Salesforce, set it to opportunity paid note. Just so you know, at Nintex, this is a scenario that we have today. Our billing system is actually Great Plains, but we have this exact problem where we needed to tie the Salesforce side over to our billing, and when billing actually completes and we have a payment and the payment's been made, we need to get that information back into Salesforce, and it's really hard to do. It's a manual process. It requires manual effort, and there's errors. It can be very error-prone, and there's lag there, so that can be very difficult to do. So let's see if this is kicked off yet, and if not, that's okay. We can end the session here because I wanted to make sure that we had a couple minutes for questions. But what should have happened? Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm missing a step here. Oh, all right. So I'm messing up my own demo. So what I have in here as a step in this is to say if there is a discount on this quote more than 40%, then we need to get senior sales approval. Anyone deal with discounts within their group or in their environment? Discounts very common in an enterprise. So let me go back into my my email here, and I don't think I see it here either. Well, that's okay. It's the same concept of the express approval. So when whoever it is, it could be somebody in sales, a senior manager, when they actually get this notification, it'll say, hey, there's been a quote. It has a discount more than 40%. Do you approve? If yes, then we'll continue on with the creation of the ERP record in NetSuite. So it's probably my fault for not following this correctly on my end, but I apologize. Thankfully, we have a booth right over here, and I can show you all of this again in real time. So if you have questions, we're right in front of that Airstream camper right here in the corner. Feel free to come over. Our entire product team is here. And another thing to plug, this product is available for free right now to everyone. We're in advanced preview. So we just got out of a beta, and it's open to everyone. So if you go out to nintex.com, look for Nintex Workflow Cloud, you can actually sign up. We'll send you information with a URL with your own tenant, and you'll be able to go in here and do exactly what I just showed you within the product. So you can get started automating workflows really, really quickly. And the good thing is we have the whole product team here to answer any questions that you might have. So with that, I'll end the demo. Thank you for your time, and we have just a couple minutes for questions. Does anyone have any questions about the product, the demo, or anything else? Anyone? Any brave souls? No? Okay, cool. Well, thanks, guys, for your time. I appreciate it. Again, the Nintex booth is right over here. If you have questions, let us know. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Have a great rest of your day here at the conference. And have fun at U2. Who's going to U2? Me too.